Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you're new to this channel, or you have not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support this channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they're live, and a PayPal link in the info box below the video once it's rendered. But most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below the video to join the panel and express your views on the shape of the Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show. Sharing the show increases the live audience, of course, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show. And one last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now, we are joined by the Rumpus and Anthony. How the devil are you both?
All good, my friend.
Fine.
So we'll just jump straight into it because I'm conscious that the football's due to start in half an hour to 35 minutes.
Indeed.
So on that note,
we'll start a debate, but never mind.
Well,
Not that I knew
I wanted to
anything
do it
about this, of
before-
course. I didn't even know this was happening. I just happened to randomly spot this. I didn't know this was happening at all. I was just informed of it, and then I saw it. Anyway, carry on.
So you didn't randomly spot it then? You were informed?
Well, both. I randomly spotted it, and as I was randomly spotting it, I was informed by someone I was engaged in a debate, so it happened simultaneously.
Simultaneously? The chances of that, Rumpus, will be quite slim,
Well,
don't
it
you
was
think?
within a few seconds, within a minute, to be unusually coincidental that I happened to be wandering around and then got across, saw this was on, and then someone said, "Oh, you're engaged in the debate." Oh, well, fine.
All right, let's get straight into it. Right, my assertion is that the Metabunk curve calculator has been misapplied by every single baller, including yourself, on all of the observations that anybody has ever taken anywhere in flat Earth, because you all apply the hidden value, whatever that value is, against the full height of the object. You do not apply it to the apparent height, because the apparent height drops with the curvature of the Earth and gets smaller over distance, and therefore gives you guys a misrepresentative position of the ball Earth that we're supposed to live on.
Absolutely insane, and I can't. This is worse than your claim to be able to see Ireland. You're going to be so embarrassed about this. I don't know when, but you will realise what's going on at some stage, perhaps, presumably, and you'll think, "What the hell was I doing?"
Okay.
Right, well, I can give you. Let's do a little diagram then to show what's going on. And I've got. Let's share my screen here.
Just let me know when you're ready.
I think this is the one. Oh, I've got the wrong one. Well done, me. So I've cocked that up.
So I'll give you a couple of minutes to get through this, and then Anthony will get a couple of minutes to respond if that's good by you.
But basically, the question is, can you show me how the curve calculator is considered an...
Well, hang on, Anthony. You've said all that. Let's just give him a chance.
Anthony?
Okay, you're up.
Sorry, was Anthony mid-sentence there?
I don't know. I was just saying, can you show me and demonstrate how it is that I've got it wrong?
Right, okay. I'm screen sharing, right?
Screen sharing, yes. Whenever you're ready.
With house on?
Yes.
Right. What does the curve calculator try and do? The curve calculator tries to tell you the absolute size of the missing portion or the obscured portion of an object. It does not try and emulate a camera or an observer. It doesn't try and do that, because to do that, it would have to do what Google Earth or some other, or Peak Finder would do, and you have to feed in things like what zoom you're doing, what angle you're looking up and down, etc., and you try and draw a picture. Only when you try and draw a picture do you have to worry about perspective. So, for instance, this example here, I've got this house, and if I were to say to you, Anthony, please provide me with the side elevation of a house, and this is what, although this orthographic business, orthographics are usually used when doing a 3D object like this object down here where you're trying to observe size. That side elevation is technically a subset of orthographic, but if you were to present this to someone who knew about technical drawing, they would say this was a side elevation. Anyway, so this is if I were to ask you to present to me the absolute coordinates of things, you would present me something like this. Or if you were drawing a train or something, if you were trying to present me with the plans of a train, you would present me with something like this. Nothing to do with an observer. So what the Metabunk calculator does not do, which is what you're obsessed with, you don't seem able to think of things in terms of absolute coordinates of things. You seem to be obsessed with an observer. So if I introduce an observer into what I've got here, oh, where's he gone? Oh, there we go. There. So here's an observer here, and he's looking at this house. And from his point of view, he sees that. And then we can work out what theta is. But this is an observation. This is not what the Metabunk calculator is trying to do. If it were to try and present you with an image of the thing you were looking at, then it would have to do that. But it's not. It's just saying this is the absolute size. Now, if you want to think about this, imagine that this was you, Anthony, being the cameraman. Let's imagine you didn't have a camera. And let's suppose you had to tell Nathan how much of this house you could see. The way you would say is you could see, I don't know, let's call this 40 meters high or something, 20 meters high, perhaps better. You would say to Nathan, I can see 20 meters of the house if you didn't have a camera. And when let's suppose someone chopped the house in half. Where's my little choppy thing?
You've had a good couple of minutes. Do you want another 30 seconds to round out your point?
Okay. Oh God, right. I didn't realize there was a. Then you would say, well, that's my big triangle gone. Then you would say, I can then see this many, but because you see the observer being present, you're obsessed with what an observer sees. The rest of us worry about the absolute values, and then, and only if you wish to present an image, do you then have to worry about perspective. The Metabunk calculator does not try and present you with a photograph, and therefore does not have to worry about perspective. If you wish to do your own camera photograph analysis, you have to work out what the absolute size of things, but that's left up to you to do, not by the Metabunk calculator.
Okay, thank you, Rumpus. So you had a good 3.5 minutes. I don't know if you want to take your time and reply to that, Anthony. I'll give you maybe the same.
Share screen, hang on. Right, so can you see my screen, Nath?
You're going to need to give me a couple of seconds.
What? Why is it done? Hang on, give me a sec. Let me knock this off. Stop sharing. I need to get the file, but the file's not saved the way I expected it. Just bear with me 1 sec. I have the file, but it didn't save properly. Where has it gone? Oh, bloody hell. I'm on a different PC at the minute. No, I have on my other PC. This is like sat there ready to go all the time because I'm not at home. I just need to re-find it. Oh, is Adam Meakin, is he around?
I have no idea.
I'm just trying to find the photo that I've just saved, but for some reason it saved it as some other than what I asked it to. Right, I'll just do it. I'll do it like this. We'll have to improvise. It's not as pretty on the eye, but it'll do. Right, share screens and sounds. Rumpus, do you see my screen?
No, because you're on Skype.
You will do.
Right, yes, okay, yeah, right.
Right, this is like cropped to the thumbnail, so we're gonna have to imagine that there's an observer stood here.
Yeah.
Do we agree that?
Carry on, sorry, I shouldn't have interrupted there.
Do we agree that objects, as they go further away from the observer that's on the left of picture that's been cut off, do we agree that objects appear to get smaller?
To an observer, yes.
As a function of distance.
As to an observer, yes.
Right. So if we live on a plane, that's the end of the conversation. Things get smaller over distance. That's it. Doesn't go any further. However, we live on a ball.
Things get smaller on a sphere as well.
And you try not to just. He might ask you a couple of direct questions, Rumpus, but he's just making a few assertions. You know.
Do we agree that on a ball that things appear to get smaller on distance as well as tip away and drop behind the curve, and that the further away these things go between the observer and the target, a hump will arise out of the floor, because that will be the obstruction?
That was appallingly put, but the general thrust of your point was correct.
So when it comes to the Metabunk curve calculator, perhaps you could show me how it is that when we apply, let's just go with the mountain at 30 miles away, the 1,000-foot mountain at 30 miles away. We have the 30-mile observation, and it gives us a value of 452 feet in this case, okay?
Yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah.
if we apply what we saw before, which is a mountain will shrink as it goes over distance.
Hold on, you're doing an
drop
observer operation. The Metabunk calculator is not doing an observer operation. You're doing something it is not doing.
I agree. This is the bit where the ball has come into it.
Well, hold on a second. Sorry, Rumpus. You personally have presented us with the Metabunk calculation in comparison to photography.
I haven't actually ever used the Metabunk calculator. I've used my own. But yes, in principle, what you're saying is correct. I've used the very similar calculation, but I haven't actually done what you said. And the way I did it, I can show you.
No, not at this point.
Okay.
You've agreed that point, and I'm fine at that point.
Okay.
I want to push it on. So if you agree that a mountain on a ball shrinks with distance because of perspective, it also drops behind a curve, it tips away, and there is a bulge that magically appears between us and the mountain in the distance. Can you show me? Well, you've denied it already, but let's get rid of that. If we have, in this case, the 1,000-foot mountain at 30 miles, 452 feet of it is the refracted hidden. Now, the line for the refracted hidden is this dotted line here. I'll try and zoom in a little bit. Oh, I can't really zoom in. There we go.
It's fine as is.
So this line represents the limit, the upper limit for the refracted hidden value, correct?
Correct.
So 450 feet or whatever it was. However, the mountain shrinks over distance. So
Only
the problem
to an
that we have, hang on, the problem we have is the only time the mountain is at 1,000 feet is when it's here.
It's not drawing
All
a picture.
the time it gets further away from us, Rumpus, it shrinks.
It's not presenting you with a photograph, Anthony. It's not presenting you with a photograph. It's showing you how, in real world, the absolute coordinates, and that's absolutely correct. It's not presenting you with a photograph. If it had a photograph on screen next to you, or it rendered, underneath this, it put a little photograph of what the observer sees, then it would have to account for perspective. But that diagram is not trying to account for perspective.
But that's exactly what I've just said to you. Sorry to interrupt. I just made this point. I don't want to interject here, but that's precisely what you have done. You have had a photograph that somebody has taken, and then you have used these calculations to compare to a photograph.
Yes, and the way I did that was...
So that's incorrect. So that's incorrect then, because you haven't performed the function of reducing the target size based on its angular size reduction at distance.
No, listen.
It's all right, it's all right. Let me deal with this.
Let me finish my bloody reply to this. God damn it. Right, way I've done it, for instance, let's take a picture of the Moorgold Lighthouse. What I did was I worked out the angular size and the absolute size from information in the photograph. I worked out from the pixels that I could see what the absolute size, say the gap below the base of the lighthouse was. I worked that out in absolute terms.
Yes, but we're not talking in absolute terms, Rumpus. We're talking about apparent terms. The angular size reduction is not the absolute size. So I'm a bit lost. Why are you telling us about you calculating out the absolute size?
Let me finish my goddamn sentence.
Well,
right.
Let
me finish
my goddamn sentence. Now, so when I have used photographic analysis to determine the absolute size of the pixels of the picture, I've worked out the absolute size, say 4 meters in the case of the Moorgold Lighthouse. I've done that by photographic analysis. So I've worked out that the gap between the base of the lighthouse and the horizon is 4 meters. So I've taken that figure that I've worked out just from the photograph, and then I've got an absolute value, and then I go to my calculator, or in the case of Metabunk, and see what it says. And if it says it's 4 meters as well, I've got an alignment. I did not use the Metabunk calculator in any way, shape, or form to do an analysis on the photograph.
Yeah, you've used your own derivative of the same thing, though.
No, I did a completely different procedure. I'll show you how I do it if you like. I
don't care about that. Listen,
from information
I've seen you with my own 2 eyes use the Metabunk curve calculator.
Yeah, I'm sure I've got reference to it on some of the debates as well. So let's just peg that down. Hold on, Rumpus. Let's just peg that down. So you're going to say you have never used that calculator in comparison to photography?
Right. Now, not in the way you've described. I tried. You obviously didn't listen to what I just said. I did not use the Metabunk calculator to generate an angular size. What I did...
Right, that's our point. That's exactly what we're saying. We're saying you're using the calculation but not accounting for angular size.
I did not use the Metabunk calculator as you described. I worked out the absolute size.
Yes, that's our point. We're talking about the angular size, and there should be an angular size reduction accounted for.
Yes, and no, because you can work out the absolute size of something.
Yes, we're talking about the angular size, not the
Let me finish my
absolute size.
goddamn sentence. I used the photograph to work out an absolute size. I've not used the Metabunk calculator to do that. So I've used the photograph. Let's say this again because you haven't understood it. I used the photograph to work out the absolute size of something in the photograph. So all I need to then do is to use the absolute size I've derived from the Metabunk calculator and compare them. But I've not used the Metabunk calculator to generate an angular size or to do anything with the photograph.
Okay, so
all right.
hold on, just one question. So do you calculate the absolute size of the obstruction, i.e. the bulge?
That's included in the hidden calculation. I can show how that's done.
Sorry,
if you like.
you're just saying you've extrapolated out separately for target. Well, the bulge is also a target. So we're not referencing the Metabunk calculation now. We're referencing this secondary function. So my question to you was, did you also do this same function for the other thing that is in the photograph in the way, which would be the obstruction? So have you done this function for that also?
You don't need to.
Sorry, it is also a target that is supposed to be obscuring stuff. Why on earth wouldn't you need to do it for that also?
Because the only thing I need to work out from the photograph, let me bring up the image of the Morgold Lighthouse.
No, just explain to me why you wouldn't need to do it for a different target that's in the foreground, i.e. the bulge.
Because I work out, for instance, the gap of the Morgold Lighthouse above the horizon in absolute terms using information from the photograph.
You've said all that.
Rumpus,
I've heard it. You're
Rumpus,
repeating yourself.
It should be relative terms, Rumpus, not
right.
absolute.
I've already exactly. I've said already that we're not looking at the absolute sizes of things. We're looking at the relative sizes.
Yes, and you shouldn't be. That's your problem.
No, we should be, because we encounter perspective. Things have relative size changes respective to each other. In this instance, the bulge.
But I can work out the absolute size of
yes,
things.
well, we want
We're
to know.
not interested in the absolute size. We know them.
Right.
Right. Let me show you this.
We're not interested.
No, Rumpus.
No, you're not. You're not
The
understanding.
issue is, do you agree that objects appear to shrink over distance?
Hold on.
Yes.
Let me just show. Here we go. I don't know if you can see. Can you see this image of the Morgold Lighthouse here?
Rumpus, this is a distraction.
Hold on. This is
Answer
critical.
the question
Hold
with
on,
a yes or
explain
no.
everything to you.
Hold on, Anthony. Let him make his point.
Right. Can you see this image of the Morgold Lighthouse here?
Anthony can't. Just give me a second.
How am I going to see it? Through the Skype?
Just give me a second.
Okay. Because I didn't even see the other picture.
I thought that.
Right. Go see if I got the bit that I actually used. Hold on.
Right, you're presented to the audience and to Anthony
Okay.
Rumpus.
So
in your
there's
own
the
time.
Morgold Lighthouse, and I've got a better one where I did a better analysis up here. Oh, bugger, I've lost. Okay, we'll go back to that one. Right, so there is the Morgold Lighthouse, that image there. There's the horizon. Now,
Sorry, just before you go on, where's the horizon? I didn't see a mouse move,
this horizon here. This horizon here.
But the horizon is the thing obstructing it.
Well, it's not. Well, it's the Morgold Lighthouse is just above it. So the hidden calculator tells you.
I need to get this pegged. The thing that causes the obstruction, the thing that I'm saying you should also perform this calculation on, is the thing that is obstructing our view. Correct?
Yeah, and the hidden calculation
Hold on. What you have just pointed at isn't that.
This is the horizon. This is the thing that's doing obstructing.
No, you're pointing at something else now. You're pointing at the lower.
No, this thing. Can you not see my pointer? Not see my pointer there?
Right.
I'll draw something bigger, perhaps, if you're having problems seeing it. Let me draw a bigger line in then. So here, make that a bit thicker. Make that yellow.
Okay,
right.
So that's
there.
that. Okay, can you tell me the distance to that in your globe world, assuming R?
You can work it out from the
Just
observer
tell me.
height.
Just you work it out on the fly, please. Can you tell me this is also a target? This is the bulge, according to you. So I want to know how big it is based on its distance, therefore its angular size.
Well, it's 1.73 miles away, Rumpus.
Sorry, we've had an answer from Anthony. It's 1.73 miles away. So, Have you calculated the absolute size and then compared that to the relative size at distance of this lighthouse?
Don't need to.
Sorry,
The
it's a
hidden
target.
calculation-
It's a target, is it not? It
No,
is
the
in the
target
picture.
is
It
the-
is
the
really...
tar- no.
Sorry, are you saying that it's not there? Are you saying the bulge isn't there?
No, I didn't say it wasn't there. The
So if
target
it's there,
to do the
why would we
calculations on-
ignore it?
The target.
Sorry,
to do
I
the
don't see a
calculation-
bulge. This is the problem. I don't actually see a bulge, but you're saying it is there. Now I want to know why would we ignore something that's there? It's a target, isn't it?
No, the target we're worrying about is the lighthouse.
Anything that's
And
in the picture is a target. And if the
No,
bulge is in the
we're focusing
picture,
on
it's a
one target,
target.
Nathan.
Sorry, if the target is the bulge, we watched a video with M. Scott Veach where he had a gorilla with a shelf. Well, the shelf was comparable to the horizon, the bulge.
Yeah, well, he didn't.
Yeah, you're just stuttering. We do have a second target. That would be the bulge. Now,
No,
I want to
you
know
don't
why you
understand,
wouldn't
Nathan.
apply
You
this
don't
calculation to
understand.
that target.
You don't understand. The hidden calculation includes what the horizon.
Not the hidden calculation. This is the secondary function. We're not looking at the target in the calculation. We're applying secondary function calculations to all targets in this photograph. Now,
No,
why wouldn't you apply it to a bulge that we
not.
don't see?
Right, here we go. I can work out from this photograph the absolute size in terms of meters of the visible part of the base of this
Rumpus,
lighthouse is
we're
above.
not asking you
Hold
to
on,
do
hold
the
on, Nancy.
absolute
You interrupt me
size.
mid bloody
Yes,
sentence.
because he said we're not asking you for the absolute size. We keep pointing out that we're talking about perspective, which is relative sizes. I'm not interested in you working out anything other than its relative size based on its distance, which
And
would
that's
be a
because you don't
function of perspective. That is all we are interested in. Now, I'm also interested in the target, which you claim is in the picture and we claim is not. Now, that would be the bulge. I want to know why you don't account for the angular size of this other target, which you claim
Because
is
you
at
don't have
1.4
to.
miles away. Yes, you do. It's a target.
No, you don't.
Yes,
No,
you do. It's a
Why not,
target.
Rumpus?
It is in the picture. We are taking a picture,
not?
according to you, of an obstruction at 1.4 miles, and now you're claiming we don't have to account for it. Isn't that interesting? Because we say it's not there, and you say you don't have to account for it. I would say that's very, very, very
Stop
telling.
being a wanker.
No, don't call me a wanker. No need. There's absolutely no
Nathan,
need to ad hom me when you're losing the argument. You keep telling us about absolute sizes of things, Rumpus. There's no need for that. Don't be a sore loser. We've just figured out the trick. We've figured out the magic trick. You exclude perspective from the calculations. That's all you do. And now you're talking about absolute sizes of things, thinking you're being clever. Right?
Nathan, I'd like to hear what he says for the reasons why
Exactly,
we don't
Nathan.
take
So
into
shut up. Shut up, Nathan.
account
It's
the
supposed to be a
relative
debate.
size.
Stop telling people to shut up. Yeah? Other people talk. You just have to pause for breath and listen for a few moments, Rumpus. You go ahead, Anthony.
So why is it that? What's the reason for us not taking into account relative size?
Right, because I am capable, as I said, of working out the absolute size. So once I've got hold of the absolute size,
That wasn't the
I can then
question.
go to the metabunk. Hold on, Nancy, let me
That
finish.
wasn't the question. He wasn't asking that. That wasn't his question. Maybe, Anthony, can you repeat your question again, please? Maybe get him to repeat it back to you.
Yeah, I will get him to repeat it back to me. Why is it that we do not use the relative size?
He just keeps talking. He can't shut his mouth. Ask him one more time. Hopefully he'll shut up long enough to listen.
Why is it we've both agreed that mountains will get smaller over distance? Why is it that we are not using a relative size for the target, in this case, 1,000-foot mountain?
Anthony, let's take turns. Let's try and conduct this in a semi-civilized fashion. So let me explain. You do not need to do what you're trying to do because I'm capable of working out the absolute size of the visible part of the lighthouse. I don't need, all I need is from the metabunk calculator, the absolute size that's missing. Those are the two things I can compare. I don't need to worry about, I let the hidden calculator work out
Right,
what the absolute
stop.
size should be. And
Stop.
that includes.
Stop. Nathan, if you present my screen again, mate. Am I sharing? Share
Yeah, I think
screen.
you are still
and
sharing at
that.
the moment.
Just put my screen back on if you would.
It's just black at the minute, I think.
Hang on, let me stop it and do it again. Stop sharing. Screen sharing sounds. All right. So we agreed before, Rumpus, that from the perspective of the observer, a mountain will be 1,000 foot when it's in front of you.
Can't see a thing.
Say again.
I can't see anything of yours. You're not sharing.
Yeah, try again.
Nothing's working.
Nope.
Try screen sharing again.
Stop sharing.
Notice, Anthony, by the way, I let you make your point. I'm not interrupting you like you were doing to me and Nathan's doing to me.
Because you're not answering my question, though.
Yeah, but you're not understanding. I'm trying to make a point and you're not understanding it. You keep on asking the same stupid question. I keep on giving you the right answer and you don't understand because you don't bother to listen because you're stupid.
Nathan, we working?
Don't be a sore loser. You just figured out your magic trick.
You just try. This is the man who overtalks everybody because he can't cope with reality.
No, not at all.
You're the biggest loser, Nathan.
Talking about absolute sizes, and then you don't shut up.
No, you're the one who overtalks me. I let you have a turn. I'm prepared
Rumpus,
to have
shush.
turns.
We've got 15 minutes, 10 minutes
Anthony,
left.
you're just interrupting me, you see.
Yeah,
I don't do that to you.
We're allowed.
Go ahead.
Right.
Yeah, we can. We can interrupt you.
Is my screen share on, Nath?
It is
Yeah,
now.
it is.
Right, so stick him on mute a sec while I make my point. We agreed that from the perspective of the observer, a mountain at 1,000 foot will start to appear to shrink to the observer because of perspective. So, when it comes to a lighthouse at 30 miles away, Rumpus, and let's say the lighthouse is 1,000 foot, it makes no odds. We agree that it gets smaller and smaller. So this is a relative term. It's relative to the observer. It's not relative to the third party looking at it side on. It's relative to the observer. So we've agreed that things will shrink. Why is it that you guys apply an absolute value instead of a relative value when we know that that's what we see?
So I left him off mute, and when you get to the crescendo of your point, he starts to interrupt. He's doing it right now. He's talking over me.
Right, so you finished, Anthony?
No, he hasn't. He got to his point and you started talking to interrupt the crescendo of his point. The crescendo being that you are a perspective-denying zealot. So go ahead, Anthony.
So why, if we've just agreed that mountains will appear to shrink over distance, why is it that we're not applying a relative term to the distant mountain? Okay. Why is it being absolute?
Right. The thing is, as I explained to you earlier, the photograph that you take does all the perspective work for you, in effect. So you don't need to worry about it. And because you can get absolute numbers out of analysis of the photograph, that's all you need. If you can get absolute numbers out of the photograph...
Not interested in the absolute...
Hold on, Anthony. I was just in a mid-sentence there. And you can then use the absolute numbers you get out of the metabunk calculator and compare them. So if you can get absolute numbers out of the photograph...
But it's not comparable.
That's all done.
It's not comparable. It's a photograph. You've just said it's not trying to perform viewing functionality. The two are not comparable.
Here we go again. But you can extract absolute information out of the photograph, which is doing the perspective operation for you.
Right, but we're saying that the calculation doesn't account
hang on, Nathan,
for the...
Nathan, he keeps missing the word relative out. He keeps talking in absolute terms. I'm asking him, why is it that we don't deal with relative? Answer that question.
So the question, Rumpus, if you can shut your mouth long enough, is why aren't you accounting for relative terms?
Because you don't need to, because you can compare absolute ones. But
we can compare absolute, but we actually see in relative terms.
That's what we see, but you can...
Yes, that's our point. The photographs we present are what you see.
Let me finish my sentence. You can convert the relative terms you see in the photograph into absolute by photographic analysis.
We're not looking for the absolute terms. We're looking for the relative terms, because you have a relative size change at distance. The angular size change isn't the absolute sizes of anything. Absolute sizes aren't perspective inclusive. You're talking about things in absolutes.
Let me finish my sentence, you twat. Right.
Stop calling me a twat.
Because
why are you ad homing us? Is it just because you're a sore loser? Because we've caught you? You've got your hand in the cookie jar and we've caught you. You don't include perspective and you're just trying to obfuscate around it by continually talking about things in absolute terms. And we keep saying to you over and over again that this is about the relative terms because it's from a viewer perspective. And when we point this out, you tell us that the calculation isn't performing a viewing function.
Generate absolute values from the picture. And if you can generate absolute values from the picture, then you don't need the metabunk calculator to do anything because you have generated absolute values from the picture. You don't need the you don't need the metabunk. Hold on, Anthony, I'm nearly finished. You don't need the metabunk calculator to do any perspective operation because you have generated absolute values from the picture. Thank you.
Okay. I accept your point that you can abstract absolute values from the picture.
Thank God.
My point is that you should not be doing that because we don't see orthographically. My point is that we see relatively, and you should not be doing that. And I'm asking you, why do you not do relative terms? Not why you can, what you can do. I'm asking you why you do not do something.
Because You let the camera and the photography and the image do all the perspective work for you. And
Yes,
then
they're doing that. We know that picture takes things and it takes into account real life. Yeah, we're not asking it to do any work. We're saying the calculator's not comparable. Why not?
because you can get the analysis of the photograph to generate absolute values, therefore you don't need.
We don't want to know about how many times are we going to go around this circle. We don't want the absolute terms. We want the relative terms because you're performing a viewing operation when you click the shutter of a camera, and your maths is not comparable. You keep confirming that like it's a justification.
The way you do the comparison is you need the terms of whatever it is you're looking at in the same terms. And the easiest way to do it is to generate absolute terms in the image. And then you don't need the... I'm in mid-sentence. And therefore, you don't need the calculator to do any work at all.
Yeah, we don't need a calculator to look at a picture. That's what you're saying?
Correct.
Well, we don't need a calculator to look at a picture. So what?
We can do a comparison.
When we do look at the calculator and do look at the picture next to it, you don't bother putting in perspective.
Because that's what the picture does for you.
Yeah, when we're comparing it to what the calculator does, aren't we? When you put it up on screen with the calculator.
Let's change gear a little bit. Let's move forward. I'll assert to you, Rumpus, that you
not
guys...
absolute values. We're not trying to extract the absolute values. We are taking into account what we see in the picture and comparing it to your calculator, which only deals in absolute terms, not relative, which is what you capture in a picture. So this is just going to go round and round and round and round in circles.
No, it's not, Nathan. Let me have a sec.
Okay.
It's clear that Rumpus is not going to apply relative terms. And we've all agreed and we all understand that things get smaller over distance. But on a ball, they drop behind a curve.
Yes, a picture does that. That's what we're comparing. Shut your mouth and just listen to him.
So it's clear that he's not going to talk in relative terms, right? That means he's literally denying perspective. And the reason for that, ladies and gentlemen that are watching, is because they must keep that absolute value in no matter what.
Yeah, they've stolen it. They've stolen the relative values and turned them into curvature. Yeah. And the relative values are perspective. They can't put it in, ever. They cannot. At any cost, Rumpus has to obfuscate this point because he can't include perspective.
Anthony, I know the formulas for incorporating perspective. You don't. I know more about this than you do.
I don't care.
Show me where you've applied it.
More than you could possibly
Show me where you've applied it.
And I know
Show me where you've applied it.
So to make claims like
show me where you've applied it. Show me where you've applied it.
I know far more about
show me where you've applied it.
You're like an 8-year-old.
Show me where you've applied it.
The camera does that for me.
No. When you've performed the maths to compare to the picture, Rumpus.
Don't I convert to absolute though, Nathan?
So yeah, we're not talking in absolute. We're just going around the same circle. This is you losing
basically,
badly.
The position is... Basically, Nathan, the position is... Every baller that's ever challenged any observation that any flat earther has ever produced for scrutiny has always applied that hidden value against the absolute target height, and it should be the relative height. That's every single one of them. So all observations prior to this, they've all been done wrong by Rumpus, by Red's Rhetoric, by Sean, all of them. They've all got it right. And
you will realise you're an idiot at some stage in the near future. You will realise how stupid you are.
So he's saying at some point in the near future, they'll figure out a workaround. But for the time being, they've got it wrong. Every last one of them.
You're an idiot. You're just demonstrating.
No, we're not idiots. The ad hom is the last refuge of the person who's lost. And that's the situation. Yeah. We've won.
And in this case,
we know the magic trick.
Anthony doesn't know the maths.
Sorry.
Yeah, it doesn't matter about knowing the maths. We do know that you omit perspective. And you're taking us on this little circle jerk.
The greatest...
Yeah, you're just stuttering, right? You're stuttering because we've got you on the ropes. We've pulled the curtain back on this deception. You omit perspective. And no matter what happens in this hangout, you will never concede. You will just obfuscate and try and talk your way around the inclusion of perspective.
But not only that. Not only that, Nathan. He'll never admit it. But also they can never change it neither. Because everybody understands that relative terms are perspective. Things do get smaller over distance. But they can't change it in any way on that website, on that Metabulk website.
Yeah, you are denying
because
it.
It'll never,
you deny it
it'll never get close to matching.
Yeah, you deny it. The picture takes it into account, but the maths doesn't. And that's what we're showing people. We're showing that basically the way this deception works, the ground-based deception is based... Shut up! Stop interrupting. The ground-based deception is based purely on the omission of perspective.
which you don't need to include.
See, he says you don't need to include it, even though every man, woman and child who has ever looked at anything ever, or photographed anything ever, or videotaped anything ever, always accounts for perspective, and yet they ignore it. They say it's not needed.
Picture, you can get absolute value, so you don't need to.
Yeah, we don't need the absolute values. We're talking in relative values, aren't we? Perspective, yeah, the relative angular size reduction at distance when we're looking in comparison to your bulge. See, M. Scott Veach, he also doesn't get it. He seems to think that the horizon, the bulge, moves with the target. What an idiot. He's either a retard or just needs his ass handing to him with a little bit of education from us, the smart people that understand that perspective is real.
To be honest, Nathan, he knows exactly what he's doing, and that's the reason why he won't ever concede the point either. These ballers have to push this absolute value, and everybody else realizes it is relative to the observer. Right. So he has to, the same way that Rumpus does, and all the baller morons have done up to this point, because perspective is the thing. There is a drop over distance because of angular size. Drops with the curve of the Earth, and the bulge magically arises.
Hold on, Anthony.
You and the target.
He's asking how you calculate it.
How do you work out the relative size
Show
of
me.
something? You have to use the absolute values. That's
Show me where you have applied it.
Anthony, you do
hang on. Show me where you've applied it. I'm talking to you. Forget Anthony for a minute.
I'm answering Anthony's last point.
No, I'm asking you to show me where you've actually applied that. Where have you actually factored in perspective? Show me a single example of that.
Do you understand that, Anthony?
Yeah, I understand it. And my question to you, Rumpus,
is... So you understand that you derive...
Hang on, Rumpus, stop. Your question to me was, can I show you the maths for perspective? My answer is, it's not my model that we're testing here. It's Metabunk's, which doesn't give us anything to do with perspective, and nor does it tell us that we should be considering perspective.
Right. So I'll ask you the same question, Rumpus, as it's you and your calculations. Show me an example... Show me. Stop. I've only just started talking, Rumpus. Rumpus, I've only just started talking. Just shut up a minute. Shut up. So if you can't stop, shut up. If you can't do it, Rumpus, I'm just gonna have to boot you. I'll ask his question again. Why? You just can't shut your mouth.
Hold on. I'll come to you, Nathan. I'll come to you in a second, Nathan. Do you understand, Anthony? To work out the angular size of something, you need the absolute size of something.
Right.
First.
I don't care. I want you to answer me. Show me a single example where you have applied the angular size reduction at distance to any calculation in comparison to this calculation from Metabunk or your derivative when used against a photograph.
And that's what the calculator does. It tells you the absolute size that you're...
Yeah, we know it tells you the absolute size. That's our point. Why does
Actually, no, it doesn't. It doesn't. It tells you the amount that should be hidden for whatever you're applying it to. The blame lies with the ballers for applying it against the full height of any target ever.
Right,
the blame does not lie with the flat earthers because there's no science for a flat earth and none of us are expected to know this kind of stuff. We're making this stuff up.
Right, but you do appreciate that the hidden value is an absolute value, and what you do is you subtract it from the absolute value of the thing you look at, say a mountain,
So show us where you've done that.
Hold on, Anthony, I didn't.
Show us where you've done that.
Hang on, wait,
once.
Let me quote M. Scott Veach. M. Scott Veach claims that was our claim, and that's not our claim at all. You've just claimed the thing that M. Scott Veach claims that we're claiming, which is that we take the hidden value off the absolute value, and that's not correct. That's not our claim. Our claim is that you take the hidden value off the relative height.
Yeah, well, that's insane, as he's demonstrated in his video. Absolutely.
No, he doesn't. What he demonstrates in his video is that the horizon seems to move with the target.
Horizon moves with the target.
Yeah, so the obstruction stays at the same distance from the target.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, well, I'll explain it to you again, because I've just explained it twice. The target and the obstruction stay at the same distance from each other.
They stay at the same distance. Same as what?
Same as it was. He moves the camera away from the same observation, retaining the obstruction at the same distance from the thing he is targeting. However, on a sphere Earth, if you move further away, you're still at the top of the ball, aren't you now, Rumpus? So the horizon, the obstruction, comes with you.
I don't think you've got a grip on what's going on.
I do. I've got an absolute grip on what's going on. M. Scott Veach keeps the target and the obstruction at the same distances and just increases the camera distance. Effectively, if it was comparable to a ball moving the horizon with the target as he moves further away. And as you know, when you move back on the ball, you're still at the top of the ball. So the horizon, the obstruction, comes with you. It gets further away from the target. But that's not what M. Scott Veach did, because he's stupid.
Here we go. Here's a diagram showing the...
Don't need a diagram. I've explained it. Don't need a diagram.
To be honest, Nate,
I've explained it.
What
It
are you
uses the
claiming?
target and the...
So here's the diagram, Nathan. What are you claiming is happening?
Nate, just
So
hit
here's
him on
the
mute a
observer.
sec. I think we're safe to conclude that he will not apply relative terms. He will only apply absolute and argue that absolute is what should be there. And we all know that that's not the position. But his abstinence or his refusal to apply what is the correct maths, which will be perspective, basically the conversation
understand
basically
the maths,
stops there.
Nate,
And it
Yeah, we
stops
do
there with
understand
M.
the
Scott
maths.
Veach too.
Stop interrupting. Can you say that again, Anthony? Rumpus cannot help himself.
He refuses to apply the relative terms, and he insists on applying or that you can calculate for absolutes, and that is basically where it stops. If you
But Anthony,
refuse,
if you understand...
Just try to stop interrupting, Rumpus. Just try.
if you deny perspective, Rumpus, by applying an absolute term, you are simply applying orthography, which was my point right at the start a month ago. And
You
it's
don't
not
understand perspective, Anthony.
Yes, we do understand perspective. There is an angular size reduction at distance. We're not talking in absolute terms. We're talking in relative terms. It's fairly
Here's
simple.
a diagram here that demonstrates perspective
need
and
to see
how
any
it works
diagram.
on the viewing plane.
Sorry, we're just debunking M. Scott Veach now. You're kind of superfluous to requirements now, actually, Rumpus. You just keep admitting our point, which is that you constantly deal in absolute terms. So you've confirmed our point. We're trying to explain to our audience that perspective is real and that you do need to account for things in relative terms. And you keep saying over and over again that you're only going to deal in absolute terms. So you're
Because-
now superfluous to requirements. Sod off
Well,
if you
you're-
like.
I mean, you're an idiot. I mean, I
No,
kind of...
and that's all you've got left is ad homs and interruptions.
Yeah.
So literally you are superfluous to requirements. You can stay if you like. I mean, I don't mind. We can stay and laugh at you about your perspective denial.
Now, to be honest, Nathan, listen, it's 7:05. The football has kicked off, and both me and Rumpus are football fans. We don't need to carry on anymore. He denies perspective. He denies that that relative terms are the requirement because of perspective. He insists that they're absolute terms. Everybody that's anybody realizes that it is perspective. You have to reduce over distance, but there's not just the reduction in size. There's the hidden value that the curve of the Earth drops behind, which
You
then
don't know
things
the
fall
formula, do
into.
you?
And there's the bulge that happens
interrupting.
between the observer and the target. So all of these things are not being considered at all in any way by any baller, any time, anyone has ever presented evidence for scrutiny. None
Right.
of them have ever done it. It's
Exactly.
their fault.
Exactly. It's the fault of everybody who hasn't applied this
Don't
secondary
know the
function that
formula.
Rumpus simply won't
You
take
don't
us
know
to.
the formula, do you, Anthony? You
Doesn't
cannot
matter.
you
Show us
proclaim
where
your
you've applied
ignorance
it.
here. You don't
Show us an
understand
example of where you've applied this formula
that
to any
I
of your
am
mathematics.
denying perspective.
Rumpus,
I understand it intimately.
Rumpus,
You don't
Let him
understand
tucker
it
it at
doesn't
himself
matter.
out.
all.
Hold on,
Rumpus.
Anthony. Right, we'll just let him tucker himself out.
Oh no, just I'm the one who understands perspective. You don't. So the fact that you claim I don't understand perspective or deny it is absolutely ridiculous. And everyone
No,
realizes that. who's
that's
watching
not what I
this.
said.
They
I
all
didn't say you
realise
didn't
that you're an
understand it,
idiot, and
Rumpus.
I understand
Get
it, and
it
you don't.
right. What did
Which
I
is
say that you
completely
didn't do,
apparent.
Rumpus? I did not say that you don't understand perspective. What did
Well,
I
you
say
said I
that you
was
don't
denying
do?
it. You said just now, about 2 minutes ago, that I denied perspective.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, that's not
did
saying you don't
deny it with
understand
the
it.
mathematics when you compare it to photography. That's why I
I
keep,
know you
I
understand
keep asking him for the
perspective.
same thing. Show me an example of where you've applied perspective, i.e. an angular size reduction at distance to any of your comparison maths to a photograph. Show me
I
an
let
example.
the camera do that.
Can I just clarify?
He lets
for
the camera
audience?
do it. In other words, he doesn't do it in the maths. It's only done in the picture. You let the
Can
camera
I
do
just
it.
clarify
Yeah, the
for
camera
the
will do it
benefit of the
automatically.
audience?
It's amazing. Every camera picture
just-
ever
Nate,
taken. Oh, Anthony,
me just clarify
now you're
for the benefit of
rumpusing
the
me.
audience.
I've let you. Oh, thanks, Anthony. Thanks a bunch.
Sorry, let me just clarify for the audience. I'm not saying that Rumpus doesn't understand perspective. I'm saying that Rumpus does understand it, but deliberately doesn't include it. There is
Yeah.
a big difference between the two.
No, you're too stupid to understand, I'm afraid.
Yeah, the ad hom, the last refuge of someone who's lost the argument.
It's objectively stupid, so are you.
Yeah, I don't call me objectively stupid. We understand that there's a secondary function, and every time I ask you to show me where you've applied it in any of your comparison maths, you just stutter and stutter.
That's a wanker comment.
Or ad hom, right? so this is your last refuge, Rumpus. This is brilliant. All you've got left is to call me a wanker, tell me I don't understand the maths that I don't need to apply, and tell me that the camera does the work for you. In other words, the camera takes into account perspective, but I don't. I just ignore it. I omit it from my mathematics. I must, because there's a curve to engineer.
You don't understand. You don't understand.
Yeah, I do understand. We all understand it implicitly. We get it. You've been caught out. Your hand's in the cookie jar and we're snapping it closed.
What, like an idiot?
What I want to know, Rumpus,
That's
I want to know
hilarious.
is why is it that you've not blamed Metabunk? Are you taking sole responsibility for it because you understand perspective?
Why should I blame Metabunk for doing the right thing?
Well, Metabunk have never told anybody that we need to consider perspective.
Well, they don't.
But we've just
There you go.
demonstrated clearly that we do.
That's it. That's all you need to hear. You don't need it, according to Rumpus.
Not to do the analysis that I do, where you work.
Oh, right. So you let the
Who cares
camera
the
do the
analysis
work
that you
of
do?
perspective, but you don't do it on the analysis. That's interesting.
You don't need to. You let the camera.
You don't need to account for perspective. That's our point. You do. You absolutely need to account for something that every single man, woman, child, photograph ever taken, every video, all take into effect. Yeah, we let the camera do the work for us to capture that perspective. What about the maths? Do they account for it?
The camera does all the perspective.
Yeah,
work
we know
for
that.
you.
I just asserted that. The camera does all the work for us with perspective. What about the maths?
That's
Does it
right.
do that work as well?
Do what? Sorry.
Do what? What's the title of this show? You fucking idiot. I think I'm prepared to round out on this note, Anthony. This has been the best destruction of any of the debates. Yeah,
I'd agree. Nathan, would you mind if I concluded, rounded it
yeah, you
out?
go ahead.
It's
How about,
clearly
hold
and
on, let's
abundantly
just hold on.
obvious
I
that
think
we
it's only
see...
fair to let Rumpus have a few words before you do. So let's give
All right.
Rumpus a chance to give his conclusions.
Right. The basic problem with all this is that these two don't understand how to do simple analysis, and that's to get the photograph, absolute information from the photograph, and therefore, because you've already got absolute information from the Metabunk calculator, you can then do comparisons. All you need to do is to have the things you're looking at in the same units. If you both get them into absolute units, you can do all the comparison you want, and you don't need to go through any rigmarole. You let the hidden calculator do the accounting for the bulge, accounting for the target. You let that little calculation do all the absolute work for you, and then you just do the absolute conversion from the pixels in the image, and then you can compare the two values and then say, oh, they're the same, therefore the hidden calculator is verified.
Brilliant. So you just get the maths and double check what you've already presupposed with R, and Bob's your uncle. Just do exactly what the maths tell you. Don't bother with perspective.
That's right, correct.
Excellent.
And the
You go
response,
ahead,
of course...
Anthony, on that note, you round out what I composed myself.
Yeah, the rounded out point is simple. On a flat plane, things get smaller with distance, and that's where it stops. On a sphere, they get smaller with distance. They drop with the curvature of the Earth. The bulge arises before your very eyes, which is half the distance between you and it. It appears bigger in perspective than anything else. And ultimately, we need to consider this stuff. Enough evidence has been presented. You've all seen the evidence. You can make your own mind up. If you don't think that perspective applies, then believe the maths that we're told. Apply the full height absolute value against the hidden. If you realise that perspective applies, we all need to start working out why Metabunk doesn't tell us that perspective applies, and start applying perspective against the target in every single situation. And let's reconsider all previous evidences as well, because basically anything over 25 miles, in almost all circumstances, is going to fall into that hidden value and shrink that much that basically it's never going to match any observation that Metabunk has claimed to be debunking or explaining with refraction and all this nonsense. And that doesn't even consider the presupposition of R.
To generate a relative value, you need the absolute values, and all the Metabunk calculator does is to give you the absolute values of things.
I'll
and
ask
from
one
that,
last
you can do anything
time.
you like.
I'll ask one last time, Rumpus. Can you show me an example where you have applied that?
Where I've applied perspective, you don't need to, because the camera, you'll work.
So why are you telling us about it then? If you don't need to apply something that we all see?
You go the way you see, you can see what you like. Doesn't mean to say you got.
Yeah, you can stutter, mate. Okie dokie. I think that's pretty much where we'll round out. I will say a big thank you though, Rumpus. Thank you. Massive thank you.
Harry Kane scored for England. It's 1-0, by the way.
Like, oh, well, why do you tell me that, Anthony? I was going to watch.
Anthony,
That's a
you
wanker thing to
bastard.
do as well.
And yeah, once again, a massive thank you, Rumpus. I really appreciate you coming and denying perspective for us. Thank you.
Very good.
And thank you, Anthony, as well.
No worries. It was my pleasure.
Mine too. Yeah, and with that, I'll say also a massive, huge, enormous thank you to all of the live audience for tuning in and hopefully sharing this show. If you hated this debate, because you're a Glober, then be sure to hit the dislike button. But if you liked it because you know the Earth is flat, then be sure to subscribe if you haven't done so already, and maybe share it with a friend. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next Perspective Inclusive video.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!